Hi everyone, we're going to take a look at the next set of 3 puzzles from Hexagony, the Kakuro puzzles. So this first one is the example, I put it together, and the rules of Kakuro are pretty simple. Within any one of these rows, you cannot have a duplicated number. This number, however, could be the same as these, as there's a wall in between, and then you put a number from 1 to 9, and in the clue numbers give the sum. So the biggest thing to do for a Kakuro is a sum that is restricted, like this 16. This can only be 7 and 9. Similarly, this 23 can only be 6 plus 8 plus 9, otherwise you would have a duplicate, which is going to give the 9 and the 7. This 24 is 7, 8, 9, and so this gives a very clean, very simple starting point. Another common thing you can do is look at the intersection of two clues. Kind of min-max the combined value. So 29 is 5, 7, 8, 9, and the 11 is 1, 2, 3, 5, which gives us a 5. So we're going to pencil mark in this 1, 2, 3, but if we look at the 11, placing a 1 here would place a 10 here, and in fact, if we place a 2 here, it would place a 9 in this 11. And then we would need 9 plus 1, which overloads it. Or the minimum would be 9 plus 1 plus 2. So this is then a 3. 8, a 1, 2 pair, which note that this creates this pair, placing a 5 and a 3. Now, this 15 is only missing a sum of 7 now. It cannot be 1, 6. It cannot be 2, 5. Therefore, it's 3, 4. If we take the 2 now for this 13, then we would have to place a 4 here, which would be a duplicate. So it is then a 1, which gives us a 5, and feeds back into the remainder. And that's kind of the basics of how you solve a Kakuro. So now let's go into a slightly more complicated one from the contest itself. This one was worth 15 points. And again, we can do the same trick at the start with this 4 and 7 to immediately say, okay, that's 1, 3, this is 1, 2, 4, which then gives the progress. This 28 and 16 will do the same thing. The intersecting value is a 7, and then this must then be a 5 or a 6 in order to get an 8 or a 9 at the bottom. Now, one thing that's a little less clear, as I'm going to pencil mark in some more options, is that this 16 and this 34 are both very restricted as well. The maximum value is obviously a 6 here, but it's 1. This column must be this quad set, and this one must be this quad set. There's no other option to get to 16 or 34. However, looking at the intersection with this 8, we immediately place the 4, as again, the 6 would be too much. I'm going to remove the 4 pencil mark now. And while we're here, we're just going to pencil mark in the remainder of these easily forced sets, mostly just for the future. This one can't be a 7. Now, if we look at this 21, and we try and pick the maximum value that this cell can be, the minimum possible value for the 21, we'll find that it would be 4 plus 8 plus 9. So 1, 2, and 3 can be removed. If we look at the intersection with this 19, 1 would not allow 19 to be reached. But the really important place to look, there's 2 important places to look at this point. First is this 14, and trying to minimize the sum of these 2 cells gives us 13 as the minimum, which gives a maximum value of 1 here. So it must be a 1. Finishing the sum, and we'll just remove these 7 pencil marks. This creates an 8-9 pair, so we actually get a 7 and a 3. This 3 will come in handy in a moment. But now, the other really useful place to look is this 17. And the reason this 17 is a useful place to look is because we can do the same trick with maximizing our available sum. No matter what we put here with this 4, what we're going to do is we can take 4, 6, and then 7, but we cannot actually put a 7 here. So can we put an 8 here? Well, 4, 8, and it doesn't really work out. So we must then place a 9. Because if we place an 8, all of our values get us to 16 or 18. So 17 gives us a 5, 6, 8. So the rest of the bottom now gets a 1, 2, 3, 4. And we can also say that this sum of these two cells that I've now highlighted is 6, which is either 1, 7. No, we don't have access to a 7. Is it 2, 6? It could be. It could be 3, 5. Definitely not. So it is 2, 6. And you'll notice that gives us the 4 as well. We also get this 4 from the 7. And can now look at this 14 and say, how can we get to 14 with these possible values? And the only way to do that is by taking the maximum value from each value. We can then do the same thing and resolve the 12. And now we get this 8, 9 pair from the 21, the 4, this 19. We can look at all the minimum value, which would be 2, 8, and 9. Or the maximum value, which would be 3, 9, and 5. Yes? No, that's wrong. That's incorrect math. It's not 5, it's 7. So this is then a 7, 8, or 9. And now we can do this cool thing with the 35 clue. So this is a 35 and 7. And that means that there are 7 of the 9 numbers used. These 9 numbers add up to 45. That means that the 2 numbers that are not used in this row will add up to 10. And that means the missing pair is either 1, 9, 2, 8, 3, 7, or 4, 6. Note that this means a 5 must be placed. Can't go here, so it must go here. This 3 also means that the 7 must be placed, which can only go into the 19. With that one critical insight, the rest of the puzzle, if I remember correctly, mostly falls apart. So now we get this 8, we get this 1, 2, 1, 4, because otherwise it doesn't work. So now we'll need a 6 and a 9 in here. And that is the resolution to this Kakuro. So mostly a fairly easy Kakuro. This one trick with the 35 and the missing value can be very useful to come up with. We could derive the 28 in the same way by noting that the 2 missing numbers must total 17. And so 2 and 17 is 8, 9, and that's the missing numbers. I think this is a really nice puzzle, really good demonstration of some of the common and less common Kakuro tricks. But what about the hexagonal one? How does that change things? So this Kakuro, also made by me, was worth 45 points on the contest. And this is, you might be wondering how, because there's not that many cells, but this one has some very tricky steps involved, and there's a lot of clues that only serve to disambiguate a remaining cell. Alright, so let's start with the obvious stuff. 7, 8, 9. I'm going to start mostly with the bottom of the puzzle, because I know it's a good place to start. We again have this 29 and 11 intersection that we had in the example. We can actually say this is 8, 9, or and 2, 3 is the only options, because a 7 would force a 4, and a 1 would force a 10. We will mark the remainder of this. We can also have another intersection with this 8 and this 35, where the minimum value is a 5, and the maximum value in the 8 is a 5. This will give us a set of 1, 2s. This 13 and 29 will also have the same kind of intersection to get the 7, and then a 1, 2, 3. You'll notice this 6 also gives us 1, 2, 3. And now this is where, after we push the 7 around, and I'm going to mark these 2 and these 2, this is where the hexagonal grid and the fact that, again, the numbers see in 3 directions instead of 2 really comes into play. Because what we can do here is mark these cells at the bottom. We can say, well, we'll say this cell is blue. Whatever the value of this cell is neither of these 2 cells. So it's this one. But also, say this is a 2. Well, these are then a 1, 3 pair, which means this one is also the same. And because we know that those are the same, we can eliminate the 3 value from there. But we can take this a step farther. We can say that whatever value is here is green. Well, this one is then not green, but this one is then green, and this one is green. And so we can then take this a step farther with this 1, 2, and we can say that whatever this value is, we'll call it yellow. Well, this is going to be the same as down here, because if this were to be a 2, this is a 1. Well, we know these are instantly also a 1, this is a 3, and this is a 2. Therefore, we come back to the Sudoku mode. We can say that yellow's 1, 2, and green is 2, 3, but green is actually just going to be 3. And now I'm just going to remove these colors for now. We can do a similar thing with marking this 1, 2, 3, but there's not really that much more to do at the bottom right now. So let's instead turn our attention to the top of the grid, where we have this lovely 15, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it has the same kind of min-max intersection with a 22, similar to this 35 and 8. Gives us an 8, 9 pair. This is then 3 or 4 to complete the sum. None of the remainder of these can be a 5. This 10 is 1, 2, 3, 4. Remove the 3, give us the 1, 2, 4. This is not a 3 or a 4, as this makes a 1, 2 pair. Note that this 1, 2 pair will place the 4 and the 3. And we again kind of get this chaining effect on 1s and 2s through this top part. But it's actually not going to be used for its commonalities. Instead, we're going to use this to transmit information. And I'll show you what I mean right now. So if we look at this 13, it contains a 4, and that means the remaining 3 numbers must total 9 without using a 4. The options are 1, 2, 6 or 1, 3, 5. So let's just put in all of the possible options here. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Like, these are all of the marks. But if we look at this 24, well, we try and maximize values here. 5, 6, 2, 9. Well, that's 17. That would be a 7. Which means this is not 1, 2, or 3. This makes it the high value of the 13. Closing this down, this one can't be a 1 without forcing a second 9, so we get 7, 8. Okay, and this is where the cycle comes into play. So you'll notice these 5 cells all have an influence on each other. If this is a 5, then we do not get a 2 in the 13. So we get a 3, and then we get a 7. And now with 5, 7, we need a 3 here. And so, this is a 6. This is then not a 3, so it's a 2, so we get the 8. And all of these just resolve. I believe it cuts to about here. This 13 is going to be either 2, 5 or 3, 4. We don't know which yet. Now we can do a maximization argument on this 21 clue. The maximum value over here is a 6, so 4, 6, 3, and 8. So note that this being an 8, 9 means this is a 5, 6, and this is a 1, 2. This also means that if we put a 3 here, then we're putting a 2 here, and we no longer have enough latitude to get up to 21. Maximum sum would be 20. So this is the 4. We eliminate this 3, which eliminates this 4. And we'll get this value through the 16 sum, which, if we do another argument, removes the 5. We can still get there through 4, 3, 8, 1. And in fact, if we put the 2 here, 2, 3, and then that's 5. So we get 8, 3, or 9, 2. Therefore, it's a 4. This is then an 8. This is then a 1. We now need a sum of 16, so let's go 7, 9. And I think we can resolve over here as well. If this is a 3, 2, 1, 6, 8. All right? But if it goes the other way, 2, well, now we need a 6 here anyway. Because, so basically, putting the 3 here forces the 6 through a chain, and putting the 2 here forces the 6 for the sum. So in both cases, we get that result. Now that removes this 6, so we get this one. And you might be wondering how this bottom part will ever end up resolving. Well, if we now take a look at this 13 clue, we take the 9, then we're left with 1, 3. And if we take the 8, then we could put a 4 here. And those are the only options. Either 1, 3, 9, 1, 4, 8, or 2, 3, 8. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I've been blind. This 8 is actually going to give us a lot of information. In fact, it's going to give us this 9, which is going to give us this 7, 9. What am I not seeing that resolves this 1, 2 pair? Oh, this 10. Again, I'm blind. This was 1 for a while. My apologies for that. So if this one, so we can again do this kind of chaining through, where if this is a 3, this is a 9, that the 9 makes this a 2, and makes this a 3. So we go 4, 8, 3, 2. Seeing as the alternative would place 2 3s. This part's already resolved. So now we just have these 6 cells. And we're going to use similar techniques to what we've used for the rest. We can start with this 3, and okay. The maximum value is 5. Or, sorry, the minimum value we can place in there is a 5. That gives this kind of specification. But if we look at this 15, well, we cannot even put a 7 here without overloading the 15. So we just straight up get a 5, which is going to give us an 8, 9 pair. This 15 gives us a 1, 3. And this 8 gives us the 9, 8, 3, 1, and 3. And that is how you solve the hexagonal Kakuro from Hexagony. Somewhat tricky puzzle, more because the steps can be hard to see and it can be hard to notice things like this 10 and this 9. But also some of the chaining between this top section and how you resolve over here. Those can be difficult to spot the right places to look to get those chains of information through larger parts of the grid. I think it's really interesting how just the numbers seeing in more directions like that can just give these these fascinating eliminations, and in fact just cells having a known value, but while having an unknown value at the same time, and that you know two are the same, but you don't know what value they hold. It's similar to what you can sometimes do in other puzzle types, kind of ciphering an answer and propagating information until some other part of the puzzle kind of feeds back and gives you the actual values. So I hope that was informative, hope that was interesting, and until next time, later.